So before I moved into my boyfriend's house, I used to live in Stratford, which is in Connecticut, and he lives in North Branford. So it takes me roughly about 38 to 40 minutes to get to his home. So I usually would sleep over, and he gets out of work at midnight. So he works a 4 to midnight shift, and he would sometimes give me the keys to come over so I can be inside the home before he comes, or I can sit in the driveway if I didn't stop by his job to get the key. And there was this one night before I moved in. This was last year, 2021. I think it was the fall. And I was in my car, and I usually reverse into his driveway. It's a pretty long driveway. And he lives in a suburban area. There's no houses around his home. It's maybe separated by like a house distance away from the next neighbor. The neighbor to his left is maybe like a house or two down, and then it's just straight land. And then the same thing with the right side. And then there's only one house across the street that's visible. And usually there was this one night where I couldn't get the key to come home and go inside and do what I needed to do while I waited for him. And so it was around like 11 p.m., like 11:30ish, and he gets home at around like 12:18. And I was waiting, and it was dark. It was super dark because where he lives, there's no streets, lights, there's no light posts. Like, you don't see anything. It's pitch black. And the only way you can see something is when you're driving. So the headlights can dim, brighten up where you're driving. And so I get to his home, I reverse park into his driveway, and I sit down and I relax. And I'm sitting in the driver's seat, and my right leg is folded up, and then my left leg is just straight out. And I use my left hand against my door, so I'm like leaning, using my arm as a pillow. And I was just scrolling on TikTok. I was listening to TikToks. I was scrolling through, and I remember the time. It was like 11:30. And I was like, I can't wait till he gets out and for him to come home. And a couple minutes go by, and I'm distracted by TikTok, and I hear knock knock, and it was quick. It was a quick knock 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 knock, and I didn't look up, but I smiled. I was getting butterflies because I thought it was him. And usually I can hear him when he's driving home. You can hear his car because it's a Jeep, so you can hear it. But when I heard those knocks, I looked at the time really quickly on my car dashboard, and it said like 11:38. And within that span of seconds of between the knocks and me looking at the time and me putting together that he's not home, my heart right now, I panicked. I looked up and looked to my left, and I saw nothing. I swear to God, I thought it was him. I thought he was joking around with me, and I saw nothing. And immediately just call him. First I text him. I'm like, are you home? Are you coming home? Are you home? Don't mess with me. And then he didn't respond, so I called him. In his line of work, he does law enforcement, so he can't sometimes pick up. So when I called him, I was in a panic. I was like, please check your cameras, because he has a Ring camera. I was like, please check your cameras. Someone knocked on my window, and I was freaking out. And he was like, no, there's nothing. Like, he was checking. And I was like, please make sure there's nothing outside of my car. Like, I swear to God, there was somebody knocking on my car window. And you can feel it when whoever it was knocked. I felt it. I felt the vibrations because I'm leaning on the car door, relaxing. And I felt it, and I told him, and I panicked, and he worries too. And he was like, no, I don't see anything on the camera. And I'm like, I swear to you. And then he was like, I'm coming home now. I'm leaving now, so I'll be home shortly. And I was like, okay, fine. And he hung up, and I was like, I can't do this. But I did it anyways, like a boba I am. I get out of my car, and I just run out. And his house, his yard is dark. Like, you can't see anything. There's no light post other than this, like, little tiny... It's like a little man holding a light post, but it's so dim. But that's the only thing you can see, and I didn't see anything. I couldn't see anyone. And usually he has rabbits, wildlife, and I didn't see any of it. I didn't even hear anything. I couldn't make sense what it was, but I knew it was knocking. And so that was one of many nights I would start going crazy in this house. This time I was inside the home, and I managed to get the key, and he has a dog. It's a white pit bull, and his name is Tyson. And I call him Chicken Nugget. So he's home usually, and when I'm home here. So the way this house is, the way the layout is, there's 2 front doors, but we use one main left door. We never use the front door. It's still on the same side of the wall of the house, but we just never use it because the driveway and the garage that's attached to that second door, it's the only way to get in, and it's easier. So you go in through that second front door, and it's a big sunroom. It's completely empty. He hasn't furnished it ever since I moved in. Like, it's been furnished, but before it was no furnish. There was no furniture, nothing. It was just complete sunroom, empty room. And then you take a right, and it's a kitchen and a living room together. It's like having a studio apartment. So you have the kitchen, and it has an island, and then you have the view of the whole living room. So when you're cooking on the island, your back is towards the stove, so you're facing the living room, the view of the living room. And then to the left, there's a hallway, and at the end of the hallway, there's 2 bedrooms, and before the 2 bedrooms, there's a bathroom. So it's like a 1-floor house with a basement, but it's really nice. And this one time I got in, I was cooking, and I was listening to a podcast. It was a true crime podcast, and I was cooking, and I remember I was cooking like carrots with a knife. So I was cooking with a knife, and I'm not tall enough, but I'm tall enough to see a certain amount of stuff. And the sunroom, all the lights are turned off. My boyfriend's very conservative with light, so everything was turned off except for the lights on top of the island. So I'm cutting, and I see what I thought was Tyson, the white dog. He's white, he's a pit bull, and I see him walk into the sunroom, and I stop, and I'm like, Chicken Nugget, where are you going? And I grab my knife, and I follow him into the sunroom. And there was nothing. There was no dog. There was nothing. And clear as day, I saw him. I saw his butt go into the sunroom. And then when I said Chicken Nugget, he walks up from behind me, and you can hear tick-tack, tick-tack, tick-tack because of his nails. And I turn around, and I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like, with a knife in my hand, I'm like, but you were in the sunroom. Like, I was talking to him as if he was a human. I was like, but you were just in the sunroom. I saw you go into the sunroom. And he just stands next to me in the entryway of the sunroom, and he's looking at me dumbfounded. What are you talking about? And I was just shaking. I was like, oh my god, not again. And then all of a sudden, knock, knock, knock. It was 3 knocks on the door of the second doorway that we go in. It was a quick 3 knocks, and then next to that door, there's windows, and there were knocks on that window. And then me and Tyson are staring at this door and window, and then next thing happens is the living room windows, knock, knock, knock. And he's looking too. It's not me, it's both of us. We're staring at where these knocks are coming from. And then the next thing that happens is knock, knock, knock. But down the hallway in my, boyfriend's room. And I freak out and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta turn this podcast off. I gotta stop cooking. Like, I just freak out, and I immediately told my boyfriend what happened, and he just would always be like, yeah, I hear stuff, but I don't pay mind to it. And I'm like, okay, cool, nice to know. But that's what happened, and I don't remember if anything else happened that night, but that happened, and I freaked out because it was knocking from the front of the door all the way to the end of the house, and it wasn't stopping. It was immediate. It was like 3 knocks after 3 knocks. It wasn't a pause, and it was as if someone ran from the front of the door with its fist ready and just running across the house knocking. And that's what it sounded like, and I freaked out, but I was like, I can't do this. Yeah, it's cool, whatever, having ghosts in your house, but when you actually have them and you don't know what it is and you're just questioning life and the afterlife, it gets stressful. But stuff keeps happening in this house, and it gets scarier because as a kid, I used to see ghosts. Then after I stopped, and then when I met my boyfriend now, I started seeing them again, hearing them, and then it gets stressful because there would be nights where I'm coming upstairs from the basement and I'll hear right behind me, and the hairs on my neck would stand up because I remember one time we were arguing about something, and I had to go switch the laundry to the dryer, and I'm like, okay, so I turn off the lights as I go upstairs, and I hear, and then I hear it again, and I refuse to turn around because I already turned off the lights to the basement, and I'm like, oh hell no, that I said that as soon as I was walking up the stairs because the noise kept going. It kept going behind me, and it sounded very human-like, but I refused to turn around because I did not want to know, because it's a basement, but I've never heard that before. I've been in this basement thousands of times. I've washed clothes. I actually set up like a mini gym, so I've never heard before. But that night we had that argument. I heard that. And it's always when we have like an argument, that's when I hear or see stuff. Or when it's like early in the morning, or when me and him aren't speaking, but it's just every time something happens between me and him, I would see something, or I would hear something, or if I'm not paying attention, something would happen in this house. And he experienced one thing with me that actually made me cry, because I wake up super early. I wake up like 6 a.m. to go to work at 7:30, and I had time one morning, and this happened recently. This happened a month ago. In the morning time, it was like 6:35, and I was sitting on the island in the kitchen eating cereal, and the living room has these huge windows, and I heard like a man whistling, and it was very long, but it was right next to the window, and it stopped, and I'm looking, and then it starts whistling again, and it sounded as if this man was just standing outside of the window whistling. It was as if a guy was taking a stroll through the streets, whistling, walking and whistling, singing a tune, but it sounded like a man, and it was whistling. And I was like, baby, someone's whistling, and he's asleep. Like, he needs his sleep. He comes home at midnight. He doesn't sleep till 3. He needs his sleep. So I run to the room, and I close the door, and I start crying. I'm like, baby, there was a guy outside of the window whistling. I swear he was whistling. And he gets up and he goes and checks. But he law enforcement, so he checks vigorously. He's checking every room. He's checking the basement, and I'm like, it's coming from there. It's coming from there. And I pointed to the living room. I'm like, it's coming from there. And he was like, you sure it wasn't a bird? And like minutes later, you hear birds. But that bird, the birds that were chirping, was not a man whistling. It was very distinct, like a man whistling. And I was like, yes, I'm very sure. And I was crying. And then eventually, like I had to go to work, but I was just so scared that day. I was freaked out, and I was like, I can't do this. But I have to, because I live here now.
Up next, Stephanie's experience with the whistling continues.
My grandma died last week on Wednesday morning, so I remember I was singing a song that we used to sing. It's like a church song. It's like alabaré, alabaré, and then it goes on. And I sung it Monday, and then she died the Wednesday morning. And she lives in Guatemala, so like I don't see her. I see her like once or twice a year, but whenever she used to stay at our house, she's tall, she's 5'11", and I'm 4'11", and so she wears this pajama set. It's a collared white, button down, white beige pajama set with the matching pants, and it's loose, and it fits her perfectly, and she wears it all the time, every time she sleeps. And lately, down the hallway of my house where the bedrooms meet, she's standing there. But then when I look, she's not there. But it's not like me seeing her from my peripheral. It's like me looking towards that direction. But when I actually look, she's gone. And then there was this one night, it was like the night after she died. I think it was like Thursday or Friday night. Last week, me and my boyfriend were watching, TV, and you can hear whistling. My grandma loves to whistle when she's cooking or cleaning, so you can hear whistling. And I'm like, yeah, I heard that. So he needs to pause whatever he's watching in order to listen to what's happening. And it happened again, but he heard it and I couldn't. And then, I can't hear it now. And then he played the show again, but the whistling just quickly stopped, but it wasn't long. And I was like, it sounded like my grandma. He was like, no, it sounded like a man. I was like, nope, it's my grandma. But that happened. And usually that never really happens, but since my grandma died, I've been seeing her around the house. I would see her in the kitchen or in the sunroom where it's really dark, and she will just be standing there, but I can't really fully see her, because by the time I actually look, she's gone. But there was this one time before I moved in that the same hallway, something happened where I came over. This was before I moved in his house. It was like during the summertime of last year, 2021, where I was in the sunroom. I was doing something. I don't know what I was doing. I was doing something, but his bedroom is right across guest bedroom, and he likes to play games with me. He's very silly, so and from my peripheral, I saw him jump from his bedroom to the guest bedroom, and then I guess he's paying attention to see when I look away, and so I guess I looked down, and then he jumped from the guest bedroom back to his room, and then he did it again. He went back. I think he was in his room now. So I'm like, this boy keeps playing games with me. And so I'm like, let me stand here and stare. So I'm in the sunroom and I'm staring down. So when I'm like, he's playing with me, I look up and I'm like, and I see him go into the guest bedroom. So I run down the hall, run across the house, run down to the hall, and I jump in. I'm like jumping into the guest bedroom. I was like, I got you. You can't play with me. And he comes up from behind me. And I'm like, and he wasn't wearing a shirt at the time. And I'm like, what? And then he was like, what? And I was like, I saw you go into this guest bedroom and you were wearing a green army t-shirt. He goes, no. And I'm seeing him, he doesn't have a shirt on. He was like, I don't even own a green army t-shirt. I'm like, no, but I saw you. And what I saw was him, what I thought it was him, go into the guest bedroom. I saw the back part of, I guess, a man's body, and then the whole shoulder. And this person was wearing an army green t-shirt. And it walked right into the guest bedroom. And I saw it clear as day, because when he was playing with me, I'm like, let me look this time. Let me actually look. And I see him go in there. But then when I went up to him to get him, he was behind me. I just kept like mentioning, I'm like, no, I saw you go in there. He's like, no, it wasn't me. I was like, babe, I saw you. He was like, no, it wasn't. Like, I have no shirt on. He didn't have a shirt on, and he confirmed it. And I'm like, freak, I'm going crazy. And he would laugh, but to me it's not funny, because it's like every other day I'm seeing something. And then he actually started believing me to the point where he'll be like, do you feel something? Because sometimes I'll feel or see or hear something, and some nights I'll be like, no, I don't feel anything, I don't see anything, I don't hear anything. And then there are other nights where I'm like scared because I feel something in my heart. Two nights ago where I wanted to sleep early. I had work the next day, and he was in the living room, and I come into the bedroom and I feel like a heaviness, like super, super heavy in the room. Like, it's really hard to breathe. And then when you feel like someone's watching you, or you feel like someone's there, I felt something, like heaviness. And I'm like, no, I can't, I have to go grab him. So I tell him, baby, can you come with me? I'm afraid, I don't want to sleep alone. And he's like, yes, I'll be there. And I'm like, okay, then I'm waiting here in the living room until we go, because I refuse. But eventually we went to sleep and nothing happened. But I'm scared. This house is scary. Thankfully his parents are here, but his mom confessed to him the other day that, like, she was like, I'm hearing things. And she never used to say that. She refuses. They're very religious. They're Catholics. And I am hearing things. And my boyfriend told me that. And I'm like, look, I'm not crazy. Like, now I finally have someone who can hear, who understands what I'm going through. Because to my boyfriend, he might take it seriously, but he finds everything a joke. So it's hee hee ha ha when it happens. And then, like, eventually he'll be like, oh, she's hearing things too. He'll take it seriously. So with him, you never know, but it feels good to know that someone else can hear things. But it's hard to know that no one can see them like me and see people, because I'm seeing different people. I'm seeing my grandma. I'm seeing the guy in the army. There was this one night, I don't remember when, it was like last year, where I was walking to the kitchen from the bedroom, and there was a man he was wearing a black and white suit with a black tie, but he was like standing straight. He was standing straight, and his face was not like yours. It wasn't like mine. It was not pixelated, but it wasn't a face either. But you can tell it's like those old documentary pictures where it's a blurry picture, but you can tell there's a mustache, and you can tell there's lips and eyebrows. That's what his face looked like. And then he's wearing a short, like, Abraham Lincoln hat, like those black short hats. And he's just there. But this time I don't see it from the corner of my eye. I don't see it when I'm moving my head. I'm seeing him. And I blink, and he's gone. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, like, again. And it's getting tiring, but I can't help it. I can't help telling. I can't be like, oh, today's the day I won't see anything. But I could be like, in Spanish, because I feel like if you say everything in Spanish, it's more stricter. I'll be like, today's not the day to mess with me, asustándome. Don't try scaring me. Don't try anything, any mierda. I don't want to hear anything, okay? And the whole day will be quiet. Like, I won't hear anything. I won't sense or feel or see anything. So I have to do that when I want a good day. But if I forget, I see, I hear, I feel things, and it's so scary. But so far, that's what I've got from what I can remember, what's happening. But it's a constant thing. It's current. So I'm just gonna have to write a journal of what happens on a daily basis. I don't know if it's a house, but my neighbor, I just became friends with her. And I was telling her, I was joking around, and I was like, oh, my house is haunted. And I forgot the name of the owners, but she said, I'm gonna make up a name. She was like, Bill and Mary wouldn't do that to you. And I'm like, what? And I didn't want to keep questioning, are they dead? I didn't want to say anything. But she was like, they wouldn't do that to you. They're not that type of people. Because I was explaining everything I explained to you. And then she said that. And she's an older lady, so you have to be careful what you say to them because they can get offended. So I didn't ask anything more.
Hey, see you in the next story.